Hi folks, welcome to the show. I'm Luke Hector and I'm the Broken Meeple. This is a show devoted to board games where I give reviews, top 10s, and always give my honest opinion regardless of the consequences that might befall me. We'll get on with the top 10 in just a second, but first I want to say a quick word from the sponsor of this channel. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk. KIENDA stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
A second top list so soon? Why so soon? Well, apparently, and trust me, this was completely random searching, I discovered that Saturday, April the 23rd is apparently Earth Day. And I've wanted to do a nature theme list for a while. The Dice Tower did one a while back and I agree and disagree with some of the choices on there, and certainly one big change for my list personally. But I just figured, you know what? If it is Earth Day on Saturday the 23rd of April, then why not just do the nature theme game now? It just makes sense. Especially as I've done a podcast on art versus photography, and a lot of that talked about nature games, and Earth and a few other games have come out recently that have really sort of taken the nature theme and tried to make it look as beautiful as possible. Is that going to be on the list? You'll have to see. But yeah, I figured it was about time I did my top 10 nature games. Now I might have slightly shot myself in the foot here because I decided to forego anything that was straight up fantasy.
You got a problem with cartoons?
So fantasy nature does not feature on this top 10. So two in particular that you would probably be wondering, oh, is it going to be on the list? Aren't here because Everdell is not real world nature, that is fantasy nature. Living Forest is fantasy nature, and so is Spirit Island. Yeah, okay, you've got invaders invading a landscape with inhabitants, that's fairly real world, but giant spirits coming out of the elements and basically zapping buildings and and like swaying rivers everywhere. It's like, yeah, that's pretty fantastical to me if I would have to. So I just decided, you know what, let's cut those out. And then I realised there wasn't a big shortlist left. Yeah, there's quite a few nature games out there that I would probably still need to play, although when we talk about nature games, we tend to hear the same titles mentioned, although there are a few on here that might surprise you. So, I figured I'd go that way. The other thing I've also done to make this a bit more interesting, so you can't just instantly guess what my top 3 are, is that I have ranked this very differently. I haven't just simply gone, here's my top 10 favourite games that happen to be about nature. So I've done effectively 2 rankings. One of them is based on gameplay, how much do I like the game. The other one is based on how much do I feel I get that nature theme and sort of immersion from when I play it. Is the artwork great? Is the aesthetics good? Does the theme of the game fit with what the theme is? It's not just simply using nature as a pretty picture and that kind of thing. So I ranked them all on those 2 separate scales, took the average on each one, and therefore I came up with a whole new ranking list. So you might be surprised at a few choices here, and you might not necessarily be able to guess easily what my top 3 are. So without further ado, let's get on with it. My number 10 is a little card game that is, a nice little puzzle, a little solo puzzle game. I mean, yeah, you can play it multiplayer, but you want to play it solo ideally, and it's got beautiful pictures, beautiful artwork, but the nature theme is kind of just there really. It's not particularly strong in this case, and gameplay wise it's probably my least favourite on this top 10, so it was easily my number 10, but like I say, it's still a pretty solid game, and that is Village Green from Osprey Games. Osprey Games have done this little game where you are basically building up this grid of cards, and these cards have got different symbols on them and lots of really nice pictures, but around the grid there's these different scoring conditions, and when you place these cards on the grid there are restrictions on how you can place them, and you're trying to place them so that you can do effectively in as many of those scoring conditions as possible. A recent one, Village Rails, kind of builds upon that system. If you like Village Rails, you'll probably like Village Green. But it's just a cool little puzzle game. But the main thing that's keeping it on this list, and it was tussling with Sunset Over Water for this place actually, is that it's got, some really good pictures, But yeah, the theme is whatever. I mean, you're building, you're putting these cards out in various different conditions with the scoring, and the theme's not entirely there, but it is beautiful, nice and small, nice and pretty, and even though you've got some like tense decisions in it, I still get that sense of calmness, as if I was sitting out in actual nature. So Village Green, just to kickstart this list, maybe not with the biggest of bangs, but don't worry, they get better.
When will then be now?
My number 9 is a meaty one. Yeah, this is a big, monster, heavy Euro, 2 to 3 hours, probably getting closer to the 3-hour mark, and it's mean as all get out. And it's the sequel to one that's even more meaner and even more longer. Yeah, this isn't exactly one I'm playing for the calmness of being with nature. It's more that, with this one, the gameplay is on the lower end compared to these other games, but the theme is relatively strong in dominant species, specifically marine. I like marine, I'm not a fan of the original one. Both are similar games, and you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? Well, the biggest difference is the way the actions work. In marine, the actions are done one at a time. So you place your pawn down, you resolve the action there and then, but then where you placed it restricts on where you can go after that. That's cool. The original, however, has you programming all the actions. So you put them all down and then they resolve from top to bottom. And I hate the fact that you can basically spend 30 minutes on a round, putting all this stuff around and having this plan. And all it takes is for one person to inadvertently just go, oh, I'm going to go here. And now that's just wasted my last 30 minutes. It's like, that's not fun. Plus you have to play spiders in that one if you've got 6 players, and I refuse to have anybody play spiders. Marine is where it's at. It's prettier, even though it's GMT games. Prettiness is not their strong suit. The theme is strong here. You've got the 4 different races, effectively, the 4 different species, if you will. Vying for control over the earth, and they've got to eat different bits of food, and if the food goes scarce, they die out, and there's all these different natural events that can take place. So it's definitely got the theme pretty strong, but it has been a while since I've pulled it off the shelf, mainly just because there are certain people I probably wouldn't want to play this because it is still mean. I mean, just because it's less mean than dominant species does not mean it's not a mean game. This one can still kick you in the teeth if you're not realizing it. And I do really want to figure out a house rule for the card system, because I'm not a huge fan that when you flip a card, it might just be perfect for somebody and they just happen to be their next turn, and that can be pretty swingy. Let's say the game has some flaws, but thematically still pretty strong. And I think if you are going to take a real world nature game and you want probably the heaviest nature game, actually, is it? That's debatable, we'll have to see. But certainly one of the heavier nature Euros on this list, that is the dominant species, marine. My 8 was pretty high for gameplay, but I gotta be honest with myself and kind of accept that the theming is a little bit lower on this one. It is a Spiel des Jahres winner. It is a fantastic gateway family game, much as I know the expansion is probably going to be pretty sweet. I've been arguing online about the idea of making it 5 to 6 players. I mean, why? But the theming is not the strongest suit of Cascadia. Cascadia is still a really great game. I love it. I love bringing it out. 2 to 3 players particularly. I like to play it even solo. The solo puzzle in it, it's a great game, and it's calm. It's almost zen-like. So it's definitely got that factor going for it. But then when you think about it, it's basically putting tiles out and putting little pieces on them, and the tile artwork is fine. I mean, it's colourful, but there's nothing to really scoff at, nothing to really sort of write home about. But the real art is on the 5 cards with the scoring conditions on them done by Beth Sobel. But that's it. It's the 5 cards, and to a lesser extent the little pictures on the tokens, but that's kind of it. It's got good component quality, but you could basically retheme it to any kind of abstract game and it would probably still be the same thing. It's just nice for that it's colourful. And the theming does work with the scoring cards, why hawks would want to be spaced out and why bears want to be in little packs and away from other bears, that kind of thing. But still, I kind of had to bring it down a little bit for that. Plus, there are some really good fun nature games, and well, they gotta go somewhere on this list. But this one, just put the tiles out, put the little animals on there. They've got scoring conditions, like I say, spacing the hawks out, keeping the bears together, putting the elks in patterns. It's super light, super fast. Granted, I do kind of wonder what Olderac's gonna, flat out games are gonna play out with this whole 5 to 6 player thing that they're doing for the expansion. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I don't know. I'm willing to be proved wrong, but Cascadia is not exactly one I want to pull out with 4, so let alone 5 or 6. We'll just have to wait and see, but I'm definitely excited for more content. But even if there wasn't an expansion, I'd still be bringing it out. It's just light, fluffy, fun. My parents like it, I like it, loads of gamers like it. It won the spiel, and deservedly so, especially when it had to go up against Scout. Calm down. Let's move on to 7. So for my number 7, we need to cast your minds back to the Sunset Over Water game I mentioned when I was talking about my 10. This is from the same line of games, the same publisher, Pencil First Games. They did 3 flower-based games. They did Herbaceous, they did Delicious recently that I've done a review on, but they also did Floriferous, which is my 7. Floriferous is my choice of those 3 games. All 3 of them are great. All 3 of them are on my shelf downstairs. You know, all 3 of them are just great, they're pretty, they're gorgeous. But Floriferous by a country mile, it takes the cake for being the best of the 3. It is a superb filler. The art is beautiful. I can't even remember the name of the artist. I think it's Clementine something, but I'll put the name down below. You know, she deserves credit. And it's beautiful, loads, all these flower cards and all these different like bunches and sculptures on there as well. It just pops off the table. But this is just such a really good fun filler. One of my favourite fillers I want to bring out. You simply have a bunch of columns of cards, and each one may have like some stone rewards and things like that depending on where they are, but you've also got these scoring cards underneath. You go from left to right with this player piece, and the top from bottom is the player order at any point. So you decide which card you want. I'll take that one, you take that one, they'll take that one. And then the next column, the new turn order, you rinse and repeat. Keep going back and forth until you've done it 3 times. But you're basically grabbing the cards, but also trying to get the scoring conditions in order to make them lucrative for you. It could be like get loads of yellows, get loads of these, poppies, you know, there's some end of round objectives to go for. But it's that wonderful sort of balance of being zen-like nature, calming, collected, you know, a nice little filler, but also giving you enough turn angst to really make you think about your turn. Because it's all right and go saying, well, I need that card, but it's like, but I could also do with that card after. But if I take the scoring card here, I'm going last. You're probably going to nick it off me. Do I want to do that? And if I do I try to go for some other strategy? Or do I maybe say, you know what, I don't need that scoring card, I should take this card, go first, then I can get that one, that's a little bit better. And it's just, like I say, it's not like it's going to blow your mind or anything in terms of like, I can't make a decision. But it just gives it's perfect balance of angst versus calmness. I know those 2 words shouldn't go in the same sentence together, but trust me, you just got to play it to find out. I can teach this in no time at all. It always gets a good buzz when I've shown it to people, and you can play it in 30 minutes or less, so it fits the profile of a good, decent length filler game. It easily is the best of the 3. Herbaceous is great, but it's basically, you know, mostly on rails. I mean, there's not a lot of decision making in the Herbaceous, it's just nice and easy. Delicious is a bit more fiddly and a little bit more clunky, but it's a cool, effective like flipping right effectively, or choosing right, I guess. But it's a cool, solid game in its own right. Again, check out my review. But Floriferous, trust me, get it if you can. My number 6 is the most recent nature game that I have reviewed, and with that you already know what game it is. Yes, it's Earth. Alright, let's just get on with it. Earth is certainly taking the industry by storm. I gave it a good review. I was skeptical at first because I thought, all these massive positive reviews coming out for this game. I was a little bit, hype train here. Well, it is a really solid game. Not flawless, still has some issues with it, but it's still a really great game, enough to get a seal of distinction from me. Now, why isn't that higher on the list? Well, as much as the gameplay is good fun, I do ideally want to play it with just 1 or 2 people, 3 at the absolute max. Playing it with 4, there's no real point, and 5 is just moronic.
5 is right out!
Check out my podcast episode. You want to hear me talk about art versus photography. I think the photography in this is gorgeous, and I think the cards look great. But theming, I mean, yeah, you can call it compost and growth and sprout cubes and that, but you are effectively just putting cards down and sticking stuff on them, kind of a la terraforming Mars, and the cards themselves aren't that thematic. I mean, Okay, it's great. You've got this island and climate card and this ecosystem card, and they have gorgeous pictures on them. The Amazon rainforest card. Oh, great. What does it require me to do? Get 2 points for every symbol you take in a column that's less than 3. What? You know, it's kind of pretty abstracted in that way. And even the cards that you put in the tableau, you could play a volcano, you could play the blue milk mushroom or whatever it is, you could play the evergreen Monty Pythonish shrubbery, I don't know, but it's, you know, the Knights of Knee shrubbery, but it's still kind of abstracted, you got to admit. It's not like these cards kind of work how you would expect them to, so it drops it down further on the list for that. But it's still great fun. I still enjoy this. I must have played it about 4 or 5 times at the last convention, purely because people wanted to learn how to play it. So it's like, fair enough, let me teach you, because it doesn't take too long to teach, doesn't take too long to play, providing you don't let the AP player play the game. But it's good quality fun. I would be content if it never had an expansion, honestly, because there's enough cards in there. It's just good to have something that is relatively simple but gives you a lot of meaty decisions. Not exactly the most streamlined game ever. I mean, there is a lot of these abilities, you know, triggering off, and it's going to throw some people for a loop, particularly new players, but I still really enjoy it. You know, check out my review. It's a long one, but it gives a lot of detail about the whys of, you know, why this is good and why this is bad. Believe me, check out the review before you buy the game, because I think it's pretty important that you do. But yeah, Earth, solid, deserves to be on this list, and I still hold to this day that I like photography.
I think she's pretty.
Quiet, bud.
For my number 5, we could be talking about the most beautiful game on this list. I mean, there's some really beautiful stuff coming up, I gotta admit, but man, this would be fighting for the top spot. Now, gameplay-wise, I really enjoyed this as well. It's a great solo or 2-player card game. One that I wanted to try for so long, and finally, you know, I was able to be given a review copy of it. It's like, yes, I want to try it, let me try it. I hope this is really good. And it is a really solid game. Not great at multiplayer, but certainly really good solo and 2-player, which I think is what it was made for, honestly. But can you get any prettier than Canopy? Canopy with Vincent Dutray's artwork is just utterly gorgeous. Death by gorgeousness. Everything in this game looks beautiful. I can't think of a single ugly picture anywhere in this. The colour is so bright that I swear it burns your retinas out. And you know what? I'd probably be glad of it, because at least the last thing I saw would be that gorgeous. It just, so good. But the gameplay is still solid. You're growing these trees in order to score points with the canopies on top, but then you've got these different flower cards and bug cards and animal cards that score in different ways, you know, whether you've got lots of them or certain numbers of them, etc. But you're also basically doing it via a mechanic similar to what there was in Cleopatra and the Society of Architects. The idea that you look at this pile of cards and go, I like it, but I don't like it all. Pop it back down and then look at the next pile and do the same thing, but when you skip a pile you have to add cards to it. So you're making this pile of cards potentially more lucrative, but then there's going to be cards you don't want in there. Some negative cards, drought and things like that, but then maybe just some cards that don't score you much, and you're constantly thinking, oh, do I want this pile? There could be something really juicy in there, maybe I'll go to the next one, and it's just cool, angsty little decisions, but with 2 of you, it's just a great back and forth, different ways to play, close games. You know, I played it with Paul Grogan at Essen, he really liked it as well. It's just a really cool little game. But man, you know, you want to have that feeling of nature when you're playing a game, you'd be hard pressed to beat this one just from sheer picture quality alone. Now, you know when I said about, like, Canopy being the most pretty game on this list? This is the one where you could be arguing. In fact, you know what? This one versus Canopy, alright? Which one do you think looks better? That would be an interesting thing to see in the comments.
At least ours was better visually.
But this one, by sheer aesthetics alone, could make this list. But the gameplay is still good fun. A new expansion has made it even better, although I do have to house rule it, more on that later. But this is Meadow. Meadow is a great little card tableau game where you basically take the same mechanic as Quadropolis did, which funny enough, Meadow has replaced Quadropolis for me, and you basically use these tiles to select these different cards in a grid. These cards have to overlap each other based on what iconography is on there, and you're just basically building up columns and rows of these beautiful, gorgeous scenery cards. You can get like animal cards, you can get scenery cards, you can can get these like little sightseeing cards and souvenir cards. It's just everything in here just makes you kind of get into that feeling of just taking a stroll through the countryside and seeing all this nice stuff. And then you throw in Downstream, I think it was called Downstream, with like the best board game cover ever. I'm sorry, it's an otter. What more do you want? But then you get to see all these cool water pictures and everything like that, and it just makes it look even more beautiful. Now, it does make it a bit of a table hog, and I do think you have to just not play this with 4 players. This is really a solo game for the new solo mode, and a 2 to 3 player game, really. But man, when you have 4, this game just drags out like crazy, especially with the new expansion, because the expansion adds another action each turn, but it does nothing to mitigate the time addition of that. So I have to house rule that when you play 4 players, or if you play with the new expansion, you have to basically lose one of your action tiles each round. You can pick which one, but you gotta lose one. So you don't use your full set. You have to decide, well, I'm gonna use this one, this one, and this one, and this one I won't use. Does that, mean that you're not going to get the highest score ever on BGG stats? Who cares? At the end of the day, I want this game to not drag on to 90 minutes, 2 hours to finish a 4-player game of this. It takes forever. So with that blemish aside, the game is still really enjoyable. Love playing as 2-player. 3 players I can take, if they know the game well. And solo, it's just a nice little tableau builder. But everything looks gorgeous. All these unique cards, all the color, it just screams out a nature theme. And as I say, gameplay wise, it's probably a little lower on this list compared to some of these games, but man, did it skyrocket in terms of, how much I thought the nature theme just pops from this. I don't know if it was my number 1 in that regard, but it was certainly up there. And I don't know, what else can I say? It's gorgeous, it's light, it's a really cool game. Please don't make any more expansions for this. I think we're kind of done. You don't need to bloat it up anymore, but I just like the fact that we've got all this choice of how you want to play it, and if you want to play the full-length 4-player extended length one, then go do that. I'm not stopping you. But for me, I just want to curb that length back just a little bit, I love being in this world of gorgeous nature, but I do want to leave it at some point. For my number 3, we are taking a look at winemaking, of course, for viticulture. I mean, let's face it, there's not many wine games you could really think of here, and I'm certainly not picking Vinos from the Surder as my one. Nah, I'm sticking more to viticulture, where you actually make the wine, properly make the wine from start to finish. Now, I know what people are gonna say. They're gonna say, but Luke, you don't age grapes like that.
Shut up, Wesley.
Okay, yes, you have to abstract 1 or 2 things with the winemaking theme, okay? But it still feels great when you play it. I love getting the vines, planting them, harvesting them, and, turning them into different wines. Red, white, sparkling, getting the structures, getting the influence, and just enjoying the zen-like nature of making wine. This is the game I actually want to have a wine bottle next to me.
Drink.
I can just sip every now and again, like a nice Chianti, or, what's my favourite? Sauvignon Blanc from Chile. That's my favourite type of wine. Although, actually saying that, New Zealand is pretty up there for 2nd place as well, and then probably followed by Spain, but I'm getting digressed. Now I feel like a wine. But the idea is, I do really enjoy this game from a gameplay perspective. The theme is still pretty strong, but it's probably more middle of the table compared to some of these others. But I've really enjoyed my time with this game, and as long as you throw in those Tuscany additions, it's still up there. Without them, I think the game kind of suffers from, a little bit of repetition and maybe not as much variety, and certainly you want that new board, you want that Tuscany board that was thrown in with the 4 seasons. That's gotta be the way you play the game, and certainly don't really waste your money with Viticulture World. Viticulture World is fine, it's not bad, but It got a little bit too much buzz, if we can call it that, when it came out, which it really didn't need to have. And after playing it and reviewing it, it's decent, but you can leave it, you can skip it. Playing Viticulture without that is perfectly fine. That's the way I want to play it. With Tuscany, all those additions, give me a glass of wine, preferably a bottle. I'll drink it straight from it if I have to, and I'll enjoy this game. It's a great one. Still probably... Well, I must admit, it hasn't done many, but it's definitely one of the better Stonemaier games out there, although, well, we'll get to that. Okay, for my number 2, some of you might be crying foul on this one, thinking, hang on a minute, how can it be all the way up there? Is this the most thematic nature game ever? there's more theme in this than you realize, but it certainly puts me in that world, in that kind of sense of immersion. But gameplay wise, it's my number 1, so that's already propelled it pretty high. But I still think the theme is pretty strong here, and that is, of course, for the one, the ever, the favourite Euro game that I have at the moment, it seems. You know, I mean, would you call Spirit Island a Euro game? I guess it is. Well, as I say, my top 100 has probably taken a bit of a paradigm shift since that last one, but still, Ark Nova's gotta be one of my favourite Euro games ever. I'm playing this game, I'm invested, I'm immersed, I'm building my zoo, I'm making, you know, banter and trash talk with everyone about how their zoos are going. I have had everything from like a zoo with only 3 animals in it and a ton of science institutes to a killer penguin death zoo.
Where are the people?
We killed them and ate their livers.
You know, to a sponsor heavy, you know, like, where's my animals? I don't know, I got all the sponsors though and I'm selling really good ice creams, that'll do. But, you know, a lot of theme is still in this game. I feel like I'm building a zoo. You know, yes, you're putting cards down and getting icons, but I feel like this is my zoo. I'm building this in front of me. The action row mechanic, I love it. I need it in more games. But when you look at what some of the animals do, I mean, the abilities they have, I love that they kind of call them after a characteristic of the animal, and it does kind of make sense, you know, when, you know, snapping and digging and scavenging and all that. I like the fact that you can put like reptiles in a little reptile house and they move in there. You know, there's always, the sponsors are thematic as well. There's just a lot of theme in this game that is there, even if you have to look past a little bit of the aspect that it is cards with icons for the most part. But when I'm teaching this game, I can teach some of the aspects based on theme. Releasing into the wild, for example, the little small rule that comes in now and again where you get rid of an animal and you get some conservation points for it. You know, you do lose appeal because it's no longer in your park. No one's come to see it. That makes sense. But you're releasing endangered animals back into the wild. That makes sense why it would score you a lot of points. And the fact that if it was just the zoo part of it, like just get animals in the enclosure and that was it, then maybe this would lose a little bit on that front. But when you combine it with the whole environmental aspect, the whole thing of it's not just having animals in your zoo, it's also the environmental conservation part of it. Donating to the World Wildlife Fund or whatever you want to call it in this game, releasing into the wild, you know, doing scientific research, protecting endangered species rather than just your petting zoo with a guinea pig. This stuff does work. But regardless, I just love this game. You know, check out my review. I go nuts over this thing. I go gaga goo goo over this game. I still love it. It is in my bag nearly every time I go to the club. It's in my bag every convention. I love this game. I've blinged up the kiosks and pavilions from Etsy. I've blinged up the coffee marker. I use the clay chips from brass for the money. I love playing this.
20 minutes later.
It's long, and yeah, that is a flaw of the game. No game is flawless, but it's got meaty decisions. It's got a ton of variety. I cannot wait for the Aquarius expansion. The stuff that's coming in that is going to be so good.
2 hours later.
Even just the fact that it's more of a tactical game. You don't play Ark Nova as a strategy game because it isn't one. You play it as a game of short-term goals. You start with 4 cards. Right, these are my short-term goals. Right, they're achieved. Right, next short-term goal.
3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
Check out my review. I love it. Go to there to find out why. It's my number 2. So why is it not my number 1? Because my number 1, if you have not guessed it by now, seriously, what planet are you on? Now, yes, my number 2 is better gameplay-wise, even though I do really like the gameplay of this one, but in terms of the theming, in terms of that feeling of being close to nature and the Zen-like feel, because Ark Nova doesn't necessarily give me that kind of feeling, you can't argue that Wingspan has to be in the top 3 when it comes to nature games, if not the number 1. You know, I love playing Wingspan, particularly with Oceania now. I was a little ho-hum at first, but I think the revised boards that you play with do balance the game so that eggs aren't the dominant strategy and such. But just adding more birds to it. Yes, I gave Wingspan Asia a bit of a bad rap, but that's because it just felt like an unnecessary 2-player edition and an expensive purchase for just a bunch of cards. That's all it was. You know, European wasn't exactly much different.
In bird culture, this is considered a dick move.
But Oceania really did up the game for me. I mean, I already liked it before, but it was starting to show those kinks in the armor. But then Oceania brought it back, and I'm just happy to get a pack of birds that I can just mix into the set. I don't need brand new mechanics for this game now, Stonemaier, so cut it out. But, you know, as much as I've given some things bad rap, like Asia and that horrible nesting box.
What the hell was that?
Beautiful artwork, Beth Sobel, all those birds, all that flavor text, all the, you know, the fact that, you know, you want to argue art versus photography, this is still gorgeous art, but everything feels pleasant. It's got that, I'm trying to remember the word that somebody used when I was commenting on that podcast, you know, not so much calmness, but it's got the charm. That's it. Wingspan has a charm to it. But that, to be fair, as much as I like the photography in Ark Nova and in Earth, you can't get as much charm from that as you can from a good artist, and that is what the Wingspan birds from Beth Sobel do here. It looks gorgeous on the table, but it is so streamlined, the play. Even when you throw in all these other birds, the effects are not confusing. Nothing feels complicated. It just feels like it goes at a nice smooth clip, nice smooth pace. Yes, don't play this with more than 3 players if you can help it. Playing this with 5 is moronic, and playing this with 6 or 7 with the Wingspan Asia variant is beyond stupidity. Do not do it. Check out my review to find out more. But yes, you know, play this with up to 3 players and you just have a nice zen-like game. I love Wingspan, and yes, it gets a lot of hate from people when something's so popular it hurts. And to be fair, that's just kind of the nature of the beast at the moment. I mean, Gloomhaven's no different. I don't particularly like Gloomhaven, and I don't see why it's the #1 game anymore. I hate Brass, and yet Brass is up there, and yet everybody lords over it so much. It's just the way it is now in the gaming industry. There's always going to be some game that is hyper popular that's going to get its haters. You know, for me, I want to hate on Brass and Gloomhaven and Blood on the Clock Tower lately. And for some people, it's Wingspan. You know, it's just who we are. You can't exactly stop humanity when it comes to their taste in games. But I still really love it. It's on the shelf. Wingspan, European, Oceania, Asia, all those birds are just shoved in, mixed together, and I can have a great experience with this. You know, yes, I would rather play Ark Nova if you put the 2 in front of me, but theming wise, Wingspan edges over Ark Nova to deserve the top spot as the best nature game there is. So there you have it, my top 10 real-world nature games. And so I'll be interested, very interested in fact, to know some others that I didn't mention, because there's not a lot of honourable mentions over here. I already said about Sunset Over Water. Nice little card game, walk around a grid, painting pictures. It's got beautiful artwork, again, Beth Sobel, but the gameplay is kind of basic. It does the job, but it's nothing spectacular, although it is still on my shelf because it's a nice gateway game. I disqualified things like Spirit Island, Living Forest, and you know, things like that. You know, Reef's too much of an abstract game. I mean, yes, you're building up coral pieces, but at what point do you feel like it's a nature game? Honestly, it doesn't make sense. And the fact that Tom Battle put it on his list astounds me. I mean, seriously, he took off Ark Nova because he considered zoo games to be separate from nature. Why? And yet put on Reef. That does not compute. Does not compute. But then what else we got? Takinoko. I mean, of course. I'm sorry, Panda. Don't look at me like that. But, you know, Takinoko, fantastic. You bring this big box of it out, it's going to look gorgeous on the table. It's just not top 10. You know, it would easily be probably 11 or 12. Isle of Cats. Struggle to really think if this is real world nature or fantastical. I mean, it's got cats all over the place and you're getting them on a boat. That's not something I would expect to happen in real life. But I don't know, it's a polyomino Tetris game, and it's not, you know, I like it, but it's still got its flaws, particularly when you play with too many players. But yeah, there was no way it was going to be a top 10, but I was just contemplating whether it really classes as nature. Could be wrong, be interested to know your thoughts. And then the only other one I really had was Sub-Astral. Sub-Astral, in fact, have I got it here somewhere? No, I think it's downstairs. I know I've got it somewhere. Unless I'm totally blind. But Sub-Astral is this cool little card game where you're building up little biomes effectively, and it's just basically a set collection card game. You know, you've got to pick cards and get them into your hand based on a mechanic of, you know, left and right from the card that you put down number wise. But then when you build up these sets, you're trying to diversify but also get a lot of the same in terms of points. And you have to mitigate this balance between having the cards in your hand so that you can actually put them into the sets and getting them from the frontal display into your hand in the first place. It's a cool little card game, but yeah, it's really just Beth Sobel's artwork that pretty much, makes it feel like a nature game. The fact that it's all about set collection and stuff like that means that literally the only connection this has to being a nature game is just the pretty pictures. And yeah, Beth Sobel kind of features heavily in this regard when it comes to art for nature. Not gonna knock it. I mean, hey, if you've got a shtick that works for you, then stick with it, because I'm not exactly gonna complain. It'd be, could you imagine Beth Sobel doing fantastical dungeon crawl goblins and orcs artwork? That'd be kind of weird. You know what? If you're good at nature, then stick to nature. I'm not gonna tell you to diversify, but yeah, it's just a common thing. But yeah, it's a decent little card game. Just not one that's particularly thematically connected. So there you go, that's it for my top 10 list. Hope you've enjoyed it, and happy Earth Day to anybody who actually does celebrate it. I mean, I don't personally do it, I just thought it'd be quite cool to release this list on that day. But that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video, and if you like what you see, please remember, thumb it up on YouTube and get it into the algorithm, and share it on Facebook and Twitter and whatever other social media platform you like to use, and get the word out there. And also get your comments down below. I want to know about the different artwork comparisons, Canopy, Meadow, Wingspan, which ones look best to you, but also what other real world nature games can you think of that should have been on this list. And remember, real world nature. Not interested in fantasy nature, okay? I don't want to hear qualms about, and complaints about Spirit Island and Everdell not being on this list, okay? I just want real world nature. I'd be interested to find out more in case there's a bunch out there I've still not played. But at the end of the day, regardless of how you like to spend your time with Mother Nature, it's still only a game. Bye for now.